we have to believe that something new is coming. Something new is on its way. And to trust that we are actively creating that letting go of the old was a step in that greater process of bringing whatever that next thing is. So when we rapidly try and fill it with the next best thing, or we go back to what was, we're not really honoring this bigger process that we're part of. We're not really trusting it at all.
Welcome to the Thriving After Divorce podcast, where you learn the secrets to reclaim your life and turn your breakup into your breakthrough. Transformation expert, internationally published author, and online show host Tanya Marie Dubé will help you quickly pick up and move on as you tune into interviews with some pretty cool experts from around the world, showing you how to live your best life after divorce. If you're ready to learn the skills to finally put your divorce behind you for good, dig down really deep, and step into your highest self, then you're in the right place. Here's your host, online educator and mom of two, Tanya Marie Dubé.
Hi, everybody. It's Monday morning, and how was everyone's weekend? I am so happy that you're here with me again in this space once again. I want to remind you to please like, comment, subscribe, share, and review this podcast. With my online video series, we reached over 300,000 women all over the world, and my goal with this podcast is to reach 1 million women globally. So with your help, I know we can do this. Because when you teach a woman, you teach an entire community, and the love just spreads. So please share this with your community, and let's reach this goal together. So today's interview is with Julie Grimm. Julie has dedicated herself to years of school and academic research, believing that with more education and knowledge, she would be better able to help the world around her. Now, at the age of 26, she had lived on 3 different continents, spoke Chinese and Hebrew, and she had a master's degree in neuroscience, and yet she still felt totally at a loss when confronting the pain of the world. She began studying metaphysics, meditation, and she received deep and profound healings that allowed her to stand up for what she believed in a way that truly created lasting change for herself and the people in her life. So she let go of years of hatred and anger and gave herself true freedom. She released distortions that she had had about herself and others, and she opened to really see the truth. Now, fast forward 4 years, and she is a completely different person. She left her dissatisfying job to start her own business, where she has worked with Fortune 500 companies and hundreds of clients. She has seen accomplished individuals heal deep-seated issues, helping them find more joyful and peaceful lives at work and at home. So in this episode, my friend Julie and I talk about the roles we play in life as mothers and wives and the truth behind understanding this sacred space when starting over. We occupy these roles, but they aren't our full identity. They aren't all that we are. So we talk about having a sense of purpose and how that changes everything, but to be careful not to rush into filling the void too soon, but to honor the journey of the transition between your old life and your new one. So this is a powerful episode. You're probably going to want to come back to this over and over again. I'm so happy that you're here. So let's welcome Julie. Hi, Julie. How are you? I'm so happy you're here today. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm doing great. And I'm just really excited to be speaking with you again and sharing what I know with any of your listeners.
Oh, I'm thrilled. I know everyone's going to get so much out of this interview with you. So let me start with the very first question I ask everybody is, what do you do and who do you serve?
Awesome. So I work primarily with women who are ready to self-actualize. It's this interesting point where you know that you're something more than what you're being, but you don't know how to be that.
Right.
So is that, how do we let the inner world blossom into the outer world? And those are the people that I work with. They're ready to really commit to that and do the work that is needed in order to stand firmly and actualize and master their own existence here in this life.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Can you tell us how you got into this work?
Well, so we're going to talk about identity today, and I've gone through a few iterations of identity, and it started really with, I was a scientist. I don't know if I've shared this with you before, but I was like an atheist scientist.
Actually, I do know all of this because I've interviewed you before, but some of our listeners probably haven't had a chance to hear your story. So yes, please tell everything. Yeah.
So I was like an atheist scientist, and I was living that existence, and I hit basically a point where I was extremely unhappy, and something needed to shift in my life. And it was me. Identity, actually. my identity as a scientist, my identity as an atheist needed to crack open and empty out. And that cracking period, there was pain, there was suffering, I was uncomfortable. And I also kind of fought not being an atheist anymore because that was my worldview. That was the understanding of reality. And it was scary to let that go. But I met somebody, a really beautiful and wonderful human who is my guide. I call her my spiritual guide. And she was teaching meditation class. So I would just go, and every time we would talk a little bit. And bit by bit, slowly, I allowed my experience of life to shift. It was really like allowing. I just needed to open up and let it in a little bit, and then it could do its work. And I found that, oh my gosh, my life got better. And oh my gosh, I had more joy, and there was hope again, and there was possibility. So that's really why I got into this work. I said, okay, this worked so powerfully for me, somebody who on the surface would be so not the ideal client, because I'm like resistant and I have belief systems. I do energy work, which are totally at odds with believing in energy systems and the universe and power and spirit and source. And yet still through that surrender and through also the guidance of my guide, I was able to open up and change. And that change has given me so much life. And I want to be able to help other people find that within themselves, because, it might not be the same story and it might not be the same path, but whenever we find that hardness, that rigidity in ourselves, this is who I am, and it's making us unhappy, there's possibility. There's room for our life to be different.
Yeah.
And you don't need to do it alone.
Two things that you said really stood out to me. One was about surrender. When we cross over into that space of giving it up, like not needing to control every facet of what's going on and giving ourselves up to the idea that we don't know how to do it all by ourselves. I mean, those two things right there open up your entire world.
Yeah, you're so right. Like a lot of it is about the unknown. When we have a belief system about the world or ourselves, this is who I am. I am a scientist. I was really attached to that being who I was. Like I'm sure that so many people who might be listening to this are attached to, I am a wife. Maybe, you've even changed your name. You've taken on this new role. I am a mother. But the truth is that you're actually so much more than that. And when we get really locked into that rigid structure, we prevent life. We're not alive. We're stagnant. We're dead. We need to open up and let life flow through us. Let ourselves change. Let ourselves evolve. And you're right. It involves surrender. It involves going into the unknown. It involves letting go. It involves oftentimes asking for help.
I used to, talking about belief systems, I could talk about belief systems for hours. My story was everything to me. And I didn't realize that until I met this very spiritual man who helped me cross, he was like the bridge that helped me cross from one side to the other, where it was funny. We were sitting together and I said to him, it's so funny. I've sat with you now and talked to you for 3 different times. We've sat together and you've not once ever asked me about my background, my story, what's got me here. And he said, well, I don't need to. And I said, well, I don't understand why you wouldn't want to know that about me, because it's exactly the reason I am who I am today. And he said, no, it's not. It's not. You are too attached to your human story. You cannot be attached to your story this way, because all it is a story.
Yeah.
So I started to do this work into belief systems, and I found that so much of what we think we know, we need to unlearn in order to move forward.
That's so right. That's very true. It's very, very true. And that's, something we'll be talking about, I think, more as this interview goes on, is like, don't substitute one story for another. When you let go of the story, sometimes you're like, well, what's the next story?
Yeah.
Where's that one at? And then you just get yourself in trouble again because you're locking yourself in to something that just isn't really you. It might be a face of you, might be an aspect of you, but it's really not who you are.
And you're locking yourself into another version of an identity that you're going to have to kind of shed that skin at some point anyway.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So now, because identity is a really big issue for stay-at-home parents, but specifically we're talking to women, so stay-at-home moms, during a long marriage, we seem to root ourselves, in our roles as mothers and wives, and then there's not really a lot of time left for ourselves. And then if we're, going to add insult to injury, if we're married to somebody who doesn't respect us or care for us properly, then we further feel disconnected, not only from ourselves, but from the world because of how consuming it becomes. So can you talk a little bit about that and any advice you have around that?
Yeah, I think this is an issue with like women, especially where we tend to be very sensitive to our external world. And if we're in the role of mother, we have to take care of these other beings. We're always looking out for them. It's super easy to not look to ourselves first and foremost. And it's a slippery slope because the more that we do that, the more that we lose ourselves. First of all, there's no shame in that. What it is that actually it's a gift. It's a very powerful gift. It's an amazing ability that pretty much our society takes for granted and just says, oh yeah, that's how they are. That's how my wife is. That's how my mom is. That's how women are. They're just going to always put me first. Not even always put me first. They're always going to know what's up. They're going to be taking care of me. They're going to be intuitively understanding that I might be hurt or doing some emotional work with me to support me, even sometimes without me asking. And that is a gift. We give it away for free all the time, and we don't really value it. So basically what's been happening is that we don't honor our gift. We don't really value it. We take it for granted. The rest of the world takes it for granted. And then we're left kind of with nothing really to hold on to and feeling almost like that we're nothing. That where maybe we would have a personality, we don't have anything. That emptiness is actually a really powerful space, although it can be very terrifying because like we kind of talked about, the more attached you are to one thing or another, the more you're setting yourself up for disappointment. If you can open yourself during that period and release, maybe I'm a mother, those words from your understanding of who you are or wife or whatever you might feel more strongly pulled towards, you're actually opening up a huge space. And I study metaphysics and more esoteric teachings. And when we talk about space, it starts to sound a lot like the womb, which is a fertile ground for birth, new birth, rebirth. And if we allow that space to take up as much time and energy that it needs, we're actually setting the tone for our rebirth, for a new understanding to come in of who and what we are that will be more authentic to ourselves. But of course, like we talked about, if you're always focusing externally on other people, there isn't really going to be that space. So carving out space for yourself in your day, in your week, holding that very firm as a commitment to yourself and not allowing other things to over and precede it. Oh, shoot, I have to cancel again. No, you really need to honor it.
And it has to become a non-negotiable.
It's a non-negotiable. Yep. You have to carve it out for yourself. And, I wouldn't say that there's any one thing that you have to do in that time. Actually, part of the giveaway that I'll talk about at the end, the free giveaway, is about, well, how am I going to manage that time for myself? And what am I going to fill that space with? Because you do want to be selective in what you fill that space with. And meditation is always great. Yoga is always great. But it's really more about being in contact with yourself and asking yourself what you need. What do I need right now? Maybe you need to take a nap. Maybe you need to take a bubble bath. Maybe you need to paint or do some art, or, there's a million different ways to fill the space, but it's like, don't just rush to fill it mindlessly. Really honor it and see what it's giving you back. You don't need to, oftentimes this is what the trap that I have always fallen into. So listeners, maybe by saying this, you won't fall into the trap. I always fill that space from my mind. Oh, I think this is a great idea. But our mind leads us astray a lot, actually. So I have a background in meditation. I teach meditation. You'd think I wouldn't fall for the tricks of the mind, but I do. It is. It's like your heart. It's your body. It's your feelings. We have to take care of ourselves as a whole being. And sometimes, great, follow your mind. But especially when you're in this rebirth process, which might be delicate, you're kind of fragile, you're vulnerable, be wary of always listening to what your mind says, because chances are it's not always the best course of action.
Wow, that's such a good point. My goodness. You really turned this whole thing on its head for me. I was thinking, It's so easy for us just to get lost in these roles because I really don't like roles. I really don't like them at all. And you've turned that into such a positive. I absolutely love that we need to stop and just honor that space.
Yeah, maybe it's like we will occupy roles, but we don't need to seek them out the way that maybe we think we do.
I love the way you just said that. We will occupy roles. That's absolutely amazing. And it's good to make sure that we're not falling into that trap of this is all I am.
Yeah, it's so easy to do. Something that I do work a lot with people around is purpose, having a sense of purpose. And purpose gets us out of bed in the morning. Like how much have things shifted for you since you found this purpose of supporting all of these women?
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness.
Of course, how much does that light you up and fill you up?
It's unbelievable. Having this sense of purpose and taking on this role has also moved me and my personal development ahead light years because I get to speak with people like you who have done all of this training and who have done, I don't know if you remember, but the very first time I interviewed you, Julie, we were doing my video series. And through that entire series, I was also getting all this coaching from these amazing people like yourself. It absolutely empowered me in ways I didn't even anticipate. So yeah, I talk about that too. Having a purpose and having something to look forward to, so important when you're going through adversity.
Yeah. But when you're losing your identity or you've lost your identity or you feel like your identity has betrayed you, I thought that's what I was, but it's making me miserable. It's like you're losing your purpose. You never really do lose your purpose, but you feel like you did. And that's where like the depression comes in and apathy and, you can get really, and some of that, I really believe you kind of do need to let happen and not rush out of, but obviously there's that balance there because it can really start to take hold and trick you. Oh, you'll never have a purpose again. This is what you are and you're not that anymore. So there's nothing else.
When I was younger, I used to give myself, I don't know if you remember or not, but I grew up in foster care and then I was a street kid from when I was 12 till I was 18. And I didn't have a lot of adults around me, shaping who I was to become. So I would pull things off of like Oprah Winfrey from her TV show and I'd be watching, and taking notes all the time meticulously. But one of the things that I learned is to put a deadline on how you're feeling. And I don't know if you agree with that or not, but for me, it helped. So if I was going to allow myself to, what I would have called back then, to have a pity party, I would have said, okay, but by this day, which was usually just a few days later, I'm going to have to pull myself out of it and redirect, how I'm feeling and start moving forward. So for me, that really helped in the past. Actually, I still do a lot of that now. And it's not to say that I don't feel my feelings or I don't go through what I need to go through, but it just sets a date for that goal of needing to move forward.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Like everything, when we have that accountability of a date, it just supports us in moving forward. And it doesn't mean we're not going to go back. Maybe there's more there, but there is a lot of danger when we're going through grief or when we're going through depression or apathy to get bogged down in it. So keeping ourselves moving in whatever small and easy way we can is really important.
Yes. Oh my gosh. We're talking about so much good stuff today. I love this. I absolutely love it. Now I have another question for you. What strategies do you have for us to ground ourselves when we feel like we might be spiraling out of control? Because when we're going through this, I don't know about a lot of the people who are listening right now, but when I went through my divorce, one of the very first things that I did was want to revert to who I was 18 and a half years before. So that led me into this very incongruent way of being in my 40s, right? With 2 children now, my entire identity has shifted from who I was when I was single before, but I was still needing to pull from that and draw from that, which was very confusing. So what would you say about that? What strategies would you have for that?
So part of it is not rushing to fill the void. Like, for me, it's always been, I guess going back to who I was or what's that next thing. I think I'm more of a what's that next thinger where I'll like, oh, that didn't work. We'll do the next thing, right? But there's equally that possibility of like, oh, well, I'll go back to what I was, even if it was 20 years ago. And, part of that is really being okay with being in limbo and seeing that the limbo is part of the thriving. The limbo is part of the success. And one doesn't come without the other. You kind of need to be in that open space. But how do you, like, there's a lot of fear. I mean, we go back to those patterns because we're afraid of what's next. We can't really see it. It's totally unknown. It's new. So how do we grapple with that? I love meditation. I couldn't say enough about it. I think it's a really powerful tool for self-mastery, seeing what's going on within yourself and then choosing either to, yes, we'll go this way, or no, there's something else. Also really powerful in terms of getting new insights into your life, because the thing is that we have to believe that something new is coming. Something new is on its way. And to trust that we are actively creating that letting go of the old was a step in that greater process of bringing whatever that next thing is. So when we rapidly try and fill it with the next best thing, or we go back to what was, we're not really honoring this bigger process that we're part of. We're not really trusting it at all. Things that can be really powerful for cultivating a vision for yourself, what that next best thing is. I like vision boards that are just like very emotional. They're pictures, they're colors. Maybe there isn't even really anything concrete on it. You know, we don't need to force anything concrete, any concrete knowledge of who and what you are, but more just bringing in that energy of what's that next thing that I desire for myself, because that's actually really powerful. That's how we create the next thing, is with our desire, with our excitement, with our will. So even if we don't have anything that we see exactly, we can still be generating and turning our motors towards something, moving in a direction.
Oh my goodness, those are amazing. You know, I really love that you were just talking about this is how we bring in the energy of the next thing, is by visualizing it. And of course, that's, you know, I want to say that innately we know this, but it's really important to bring that to the surface and think about that. Really, if, you know, when we are putting these pictures together on this vision board, nobody's ever said it like that to me before.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have to trust, you know, it will take time. But we have to trust that it's coming and it's on its way. And there is, you know, maybe not when you're in the depths of despair, because you're just kind of taking each day as it comes. But as you're starting to pull yourself out of that and get out of that in whichever way, and maybe making a vision board is actually how you're stepping out of it, you're becoming what you're envisioning, right? You're drawing it close to you, and you're also approaching it through your own being. You're evolving, you're changing, you're shedding what was. And so it's almost like you're taking a step closer, and it's taking a step closer. So if you take a step...
Oh, sorry, go on.
If you take a step back, you know, it's taking a step back. Right. So you gotta keep on trusting and going forward, and it's like walking in the dark. You can't see.
Wow. I love that. And so it might be worth it to, you know, do those vision boards more often than we probably do. And what would you say about throwing out the old ones?
Yeah, definitely. Throw it out, maybe burn it, you know, if it's not too much like glue on there or something. I like to just
poison anybody.
Yeah, don't poison yourself. I like to do it online. Like I'll collect images from Pinterest or wherever, and then I'll create a digital board and print it out, and I have kind of like an altar, and I just pin it over my altar. And usually at the start of something, and then maybe a year later, I'll throw that one out and create another one. But yeah, using that transformation, the elements of transformation, like fire, which is burning, or even you could put it in the earth. Maybe we don't want to put like colored paper in the earth, but acknowledging like that was done. Maybe not everything was completed on it. Maybe it didn't come to pass the way that I saw, but like I'm going to close that energetic loop and start something else.
So it's very ceremonial,
yeah, and allowing that ceremonial energy to work for you.
Wow. And cutting those ties. I was learning a little tiny bit about decording. Yeah, and this feels a lot like that. So you're going to be uprooting what you put into this vision board when you do get rid of it and putting that energy into the new thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Like our old identity has almost hooks in us, and that those hooks might come through people. Actually, this is a tip from somebody else, but rearrange your furniture.
Oh my God, I love that.
Rearrange, and we do that kind of even unthinkingly. We'll get a haircut after some major change. Maybe we're changing our wardrobe a little bit, but honor that things have changed. Move your furniture, maybe get a haircut. Like, do those things that will unhook you from your old identity so that you feel like you're a new person. Maybe you didn't move and change a different address, but your house looks different.
That's such a good point. I've done this my entire life. I've rearranged the furniture when something major has been going on in my world. I don't always turn it to my hair. I have,
right,
given myself those bangs that I absolutely should never have done. But usually it is my furniture. And then in my situation, I moved myself and my children into a new space with entirely new things.
Yeah.
But I didn't honor that. I should have. Such a good point. We need to honor that something is happening. This transition is really happening, and that it should be more of a ceremonial thing.
Yeah. And I love that. It's just intuitively, we know we're like, it's time for a change. I need a change. Clear this out. And, we don't, we might be in a position where like, okay, I buy a new house and buy all new furniture. But even if you aren't, just move your furniture around. Yeah. Move the bed to the other side. Switch up the art. Do something to make it feel like it's a different space. Because really, like you're saying, those energetic hooks, we have them even in our house, even to the habits. When I wake up, I do this. When I wake up, I eat this. This is how I live. This is what my home looks like. And each of those things is just reaffirming our identity to us. If it's something that we're trying to let go of, then we need to switch things up.
My God, I love this so much. That's absolutely amazing. And in doing all of these things, it empowers us. We no longer feel victimized by our space or by the memories that are inside of that space, especially if we're changing everything the way that you're describing.
Yeah.
Right down to the habits. That's amazing.
And it's supporting those new habits. It's supporting, because when we wake up in the morning, we don't see the same thing that we've seen for however many years. We see something, even if it's just a different angle of the room, that's still a good place to start.
Oh my gosh, I absolutely love it. What do you think, just as a side note, on creating specific spaces in your home to do specific things?
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. So while you're changing up your space and you're creating your new environment, give yourself a new place to read that book or do your journaling or even meditate.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I think there's the creative. So this, for me, again, it's like there's space, and that's where creative life force can come in. And it's almost like you're creating a new identity. Not something that's fictional. It's within you already. It's maybe even more authentic, right? It's that new space. It's that new evolution, but you're creating it. And so using space creatively for journaling, for art, for whatever that process is for you, for meditation, can be really, really powerful.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy that we got on that subject. You've taken me through my home. So I was visualizing all these different spaces to work. I should have a different space for everything I do. And really, right now I have one.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know that much about feng shui, but they're always saying, like, have your workspace here, your sleep space here, and then there's maybe a play space, a place for creativity, a place for opening, a place for whatever that new energy is, because we do get sort of locked into a certain mindset and rhythm based on where we are. If this is where I work, this is where I think really hard, then even if I enter to that area of my home and I'm meaning not to work really hard, but to do something creative or playful or fun, I might find myself working really hard because that's kind of like the energy and the habit that I've created in there.
And then I just started thinking too, for those who are listening and don't have a lot of space like me, I live in a condo in Toronto, right in the city, so it's small. I was just thinking maybe the power could be in having a specific talisman for different things that we do. So something to hold on to that brings the energy of what we're trying to achieve.
A talisman, something that I do is I set space. It's almost like a little ceremony that I do. I light candles. Maybe you are into sage. That's great. If you're not a sage, wonderful. Incense, something that's saying like, I'm beginning a different type of work now. Yeah, it's setting that energy, like you said. Something that I love, you were kind of talking about ceremony. Ceremony always needs preparation. And for me, at least, I'm always like, the work is the work. but you can't do the work without the preparation. So sometimes it's like tidying your space a little bit. Maybe it's doing a little bit of cleaning or organizing your clutter and then beginning. But that taking time to see that preparation is part of the success. It's part of the positive outcome of whatever it is that you're going to do. And in a way, honestly, what we're talking about today is about preparation. It's prepping for your new life. And that preparation takes time. And it's an integral part of whatever that next step is for you.
Wow, I really love that. Ceremony takes time. That's so true. We need to honor our space more, I think, as women. This is so funny what you were saying earlier about how everything is taken for granted, these things that we do naturally, but they are really beautiful gifts that we have. And we need to celebrate that femininity, that side of us that I can't say that men don't have it, but it's just seems to come to us a little more naturally.
Yeah, it's different. Like, for example, beauty. Where is there beauty in your home? People are always joking, he's a bachelor because his house is like very scantily decorated, just the bare bones. Maybe got a little bit of this. This is obviously not all men. This is a generalization. Mm-hmm. But as soon as a woman moves in, she's bringing the
flowers.
Yeah, and the soap, the pretty soap dispenser, and the this and the that. And, that's a gift. Being in a beautiful space uplifts your spirit.
That's true.
If we had more female archetypes, maybe our houses would be more beautiful. I don't know. Or architects. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. So that's another good point. Where is there beauty in your home? Create that for yourself, for sure. I'm taking notes like crazy, Julie. When you talk, every time I interview you, I take crazy notes because what you say resonates with me beyond our interviews. And then I think about it after. Well, it's true. And so much of it, especially as coaches, we're both coaches, you can easily get lost in what you specifically teach, without having this other, like I don't have you in my ear every single day. So this is what I love about interviewing you. I can always go back to it. But the notes are everything to me. Something about writing with a pen and paper really, and you're a neuroscientist, so you'll get this, but it really lands in my brain.
Oh, yeah.
It makes it more real for me.
Oh, yeah. It's a totally different experience. It is. It's grounding. It's grounding that energy that's in our mind, or maybe, we're talking. So it's that verbal, very airy energy. We're taking it down into the element of earth by writing it.
I love that.
When we type, it's not the same.
I love such an earth mother goddess woman. I love it.
Yeah,
I do. Okay, so getting back into my questions for you. I have one eye on the clock and one eye on the questions here. So when it comes to dealing with volatile and or misogynist partners, we go through a lot of shame and guilt. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never met a woman who has been in the position to have been victimized in this very specific circumstance, who wasn't really strong from her own experiences. So in this space, we end up feeling really lost and really confused, sort of, how did this happen to me kind of thing. So what do you have to say on this topic? And I know we've kind of covered it in other questions, but is there anything different?
Yeah. So I have a really dear friend. She is such a powerful woman. And she's so strong. When I see her work, I'm a little bit in awe of her. But I know her also offline, outside of, when, not that it's a performance, but when she's, really standing there serving other people, embodying this bigger her. And then I know her outside of that. And I've never really seen her in her one-on-one relationships, but she's confided in me, I'm in this relationship that's really not serving me. And I'm so ashamed that my clients would find out or something like that. And it was so interesting to me because I thought to myself, how could this person who's just so, so, so powerful, A, be in this relationship, but B, and this I think is the worst part, be beating herself up that much. Because for me, I'm like, okay, you're in that relationship. That's not great. But the damage that you're doing to yourself by laying on these layers of guilt and shame and fear on top of that is doing so much more. And so we really need to stop adding fuel to the fire. It's like, yeah, okay, we're imperfect. We got a little blaze going here. I'm working on it. I'm aware of it. I'm doing my best. I don't need to also beat myself up with the unnecessary shame that I'm heaping on top of myself. One teacher that I have who I love, he says, it takes what it takes.
Hmm.
You know,
So simple.
it takes what it takes. We're here, we're having this experience. We have ups, we have downs, we're learning, we make mistakes. And sometimes we make the same mistake a few times.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we make that mistake till we get like sledgehammered by the universe. And if we're going to also sledgehammer ourselves by saying, I should have known better, I should be over this by now, what's wrong with me? You know, we're really just preventing ourselves from moving on and healing because we are also putting ourselves down. Like the situation is putting ourselves down and then we're putting ourselves even further down. So forgiving ourselves for making those mistakes. And for me, what's been really powerful in releasing that shame is seeing my life as a much bigger picture, much broader view. I'm here to learn. And that means I'm going to do the wrong thing. And I have permission to do that. And sometimes it's ugly and certainly it doesn't feel good. And I would love it if I didn't make mistakes, but I'm gonna. And I need to really accept that and forgive it and forgive myself for doing that and see that it's not a reflection of my intellect. It's not a reflection of how good I am. Actually, it's a reflection of the fact that I'm learning and that I'm trying and I'm living. And you don't need to be perfect. Like, you know, for these women, maybe they're high achievers, maybe they're super successful in their career, but they feel like, oh, I'm an imposter because this other part of my life is falling to pieces, or whatever the case may be. You don't need to let it be that destructive. There is destruction, obviously, because there's that part of your life where you're unhappy and you're feeling like, oh, I'm in this toxic relationship with this person who doesn't treat me right. But don't add insult to injury. You know, you don't need to keep it onto yourself. Let that go. If you can't let the man go, let the shame go.
Is that what we're going to title this interview?
Maybe. If you can't let the shame go.
That's the best ever. I have these conversations with my kids about how to disconnect from feelings that they'll have with their respective ages of almost 18 and almost 8 and 13. So, you know, I talk to them about understanding that we're here for a purpose and that we've got intention. Our soul is here to learn and to experience. And the only way that we're going to experience is by making mistakes, but falling forward. If you're aware of these things and you're taking into context, you know, what it is, like always what you're supposed to be learning from the situation, then you move yourself forward in a way that, you know, again, is liberating, and you see how much more in control you actually are. And to not look at these, you know, bits of things that are happening to you as, you know, it's the end of the world because this is what's going on in the here and now, and it becomes all so consuming. Instead, take a bird's eye view of what's happening and see the big, gigantic thing and how this is just one piece.
Absolutely.
You know, of what's going on.
Lucky kids. Those lucky
we have these conversations since they were little. I think it's because of my background in how I've studied. I really have studied so much psychology, but in the last 3 years, I've gotten very spiritual. And so those two things combined, you know, I have them really trying to not make the mistakes I made and figure it all out at 40. Not that I have it figured out, but that I feel like I'm finally on a path that makes some sense and I can really get my hands into my life. Right.
Yeah. Lucky them. Good for them. But all that said, they are going to make the mistakes that they need to make.
That's it. And so we really do hone in on, you need to have the experiences. You can't be afraid of the experiences.
Yeah. You can't shortcut them.
No, you cannot shortcut them for sure. My last question for you. Now, when I was going through my hard time during my marriage, my future looked really bleak. And it's something that kept me in this relationship for way too long. I didn't know how I was going to do any of it on my own. I didn't know how I was going to be a single mom. I didn't know how I could manage my mindset and my emotional stability. None of that. So, I mean, I had no idea what I was going to do. Now, this goes back to the issue of identity and dealing with the grief process, I think. So now I had to change my mindset and my perspective. So what advice do you give on this topic?
Yeah. You know, when you let go of your identity, it's like a crumbling tower. You built this house, you were living in it, it worked. It was a great house for a while, and then it wasn't nice anymore. And it's like you have to bring the demolition crew to your own house. And that's not fun for most people. You feel sad about it. There's a lot of grief. There's a sense of loss. And the more attached you are to that house, the more loss you're going to feel. But like you said, there's that mindset switch. Something that's been really powerful for me is, again, to see this as a step within the greater process, as a necessary step that's connected, to see unity there. These aren't separate, isolated instances in my life. They're connected. And that means that this step is connected to the next step and a step after that, which is my rebirth. And grief is a hard emotion for many people. Can feel very consuming, all-consuming. It's very dark. Maybe we're going to isolate when we feel like we're so sad, we're alone. But what it's really doing is it's helping us purge. We are like purging out that residue of what we were. And when we can start to see grief as this bitter purgative, almost like a medicine that we've been given, that's helping us empty out the whatever toxic substances we were, either partaking in, or in this metaphor, it's really just that identity that's no longer serving us. We can see that it's making space. It's that chiseling out. And it doesn't always feel great because it's chiseling out our insides, right? We're like, I'm empty. But that emptiness is actually the way that we are open to receive what's next. We talked about this a little bit before when you said that you would schedule time for yourself. Totally. You have to be functional. Maybe like if I were a monk 500 years ago, great. I would go into my cave, I'd purge it all out, and I'd come back reborn. But nowadays we're still functional, right? There's never really that opportunity to totally isolate. And maybe that's not even healthy, I don't know. But scheduling time for yourself, if it starts to feel overwhelming, okay, I'm going to deal with this overwhelm now for this amount of time, so that we're not avoiding it, but we're also not letting it consume us. Because again, there is that risk. I think somehow even a little bit more with women, to drown in our sorrows. We need to stay a little bit active. We need to honor the process, but we need to stay active. I think this mindset, like you mentioned, seeing it as part of the process. There's the poet Khalil Gibran, very talented. He wrote The Prophet, and he says, your joy is your sorrow unmasked. That sorrow is creating the cup that holds your joy. And it's really this bigger picture of how our emotions are actually united with one another, and how our life is one life. It's not separate. So if we can see this grief as a process that's going to lead to what it is that we really want and what it is that we really desire, I think we can honor it and be a little bit more at peace with it. Doesn't make it, less painful, but it certainly allows us to see it in a different light.
Wow, you've just made me think that if you're willing, I'm going to interview you for your library. Your list of books that you've read, I would love to be able to, and perhaps the audience would really love to know the books that you're reading as well. I love what you just said, and I'm going to look that book up.
Yeah, absolutely. Khalil Gibran, he and Rumi, I think they lived in two very different time periods, but they're tapping into some truths. And so when you read it, it's just like drinking clear water from the source. There's so much potency there and so much power. Wow. And yeah, it's really, really beautiful.
That is really beautiful. And I like how you said that as well. You're very poetic. I just love the earth mother in you. I think it's beautiful.
That's so sweet. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now let's get into your free gift. So you have something for everybody.
Yeah, so my free gift is a workbook. It will span 1 week, and it's a daily check-in. So what we've kind of touched on is how we need to check in with ourselves. We need to make space. We also need to not get overwhelmed and damped down by whatever that sadness or grief might be. We don't want to succumb to the overwhelm. So it's a check-in. How am I feeling? What am I doing? And then what is the small, sweet step that's going to help me heal? What's that small, sweet step? Because I think what you were saying, focusing on action that has a date. And it doesn't have to be that week. It can be a month away. But just penciling in what can I do and when can I do it? What is that next small, sweet step for me that's going to help me heal? So checking in with your emotions, doing that every day for a week, and seeing where you're at, having that reflection. It's really a powerful tool to help you check in, make space, but then also get out of yourself and not stay bogged down.
That's beautiful. I love that. And that's going to be very helpful for women who are going through this process right now and really need that guidance. I think that week-long workbook is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
So I will, for everybody listening, I will make sure that Julie's website is posted so you'll know where to find it. And I think, unless you have a link for me, everybody, you can look for everything in the description in the show notes. So Perfect. I want to say thank you, Julie, so much for bringing your A game today. This is amazing. This was such a beautiful conversation with you, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. You too. I love learning more and more about you. Definitely. I mean, I know I should maybe be like that man and say, I don't need to know, but it certainly is very interesting because you've had a varied past. So love talking to you with you again today.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who's listening. You are listening to Thriving After Divorce Radio. I am your host, Tanya Marie Dubé. Thank you so much again for listening, and we will see you next week. Bye, Julie.
Bye. Take care.
Thank you again so much for joining us on the Thriving After Divorce Radio podcast. We're coming to you every Monday morning so that you can start your week with intention and some powerful advice for what you're dealing with. So please subscribe to this podcast and share it with your friends and your family. My goal is to help change 1 million lives with this work, because when you teach a woman, you teach an entire community. Everybody benefits and the love spreads. So please feel free to comment, review, share, and like. With your help, I know I can reach this goal. So have a beautiful day, and we will see you next week.